Arcadian Vanguard presents The Wrestling News in your daily wrestling newscast for Monday, January 27th, 2025. Good morning, I'm Mike Sempervive. We begin today with some unfortunate news. Ed Wiskowski, the veteran wrestler of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, best known as the villainous Colonel De Beers in the AWA from 1986 through 1990, passed away on Wednesday just 12 days after his 80th birthday, as was first reported on social media by his former softball league, Pebble Creek Softball, and later confirmed by wrestling historian Roy Lucier. In addition to the AWA, Wiskowski also enjoyed significant success in the Pacific Northwest over the span of 20 years, forming a prominent tag team with Buddy Rose in the late 1970s, which held the Pacific Northwest Tag Team title 3 times, as well as the San Francisco version of the NWA World Tag Team title on 2 occasions. Wiskowski was also a former Pacific Northwest heavyweight champion and held the San Francisco version of the United States title. Brought into the business by Gus Karras and trained by Ronnie Etchinson, Harley Race, and Lord Littlebrook, the St. Joseph, Missouri native made his debut for Central States Wrestling in 1972 and later held the Central States title for 9 months from 1975 into 1976. In the early 1980s, Wiskowski also worked as a lower mid-card wrestler in Mid-South, competed in Florida under the name Derek Draper, and even took part in 2 WWF TV tapings in 1983 as the Polish Prince, managed by Freddie Blassie. He first arrived in the AWA in the winter of 1986 and was repackaged as Colonel De Beers, a persona inspired by the South African apartheid regime that was a hot topic in the mid-1980s. The character was not without controversy, getting heat by engaging in overtly racist rhetoric. As the AWA was declining, De Beers perhaps most infamously took part in a turkey on a pole match with Jake the Milkman Milliman as part of the Team Challenge series. After the demise of the AWA, Wiskowski continued to use his De Beers persona for the rest of his career. He turned up in Herb Abrams' UWF in the early 1990s and also rejoined the Pacific Northwest territory in its dying days after longtime promoter Don Owen had sold the promotion to Sandy Barr. He retired from full-time competition in 1994, shortly before the company went under. Together with Buddy Rose, he ran a wrestling school in Portland in the early 2000s. In 2004, he was honored by the Cauliflower Alley Club, and the following year he had his final match at Wrestle Reunion, teaming with Rose and Bob Orton Jr. to take on Roddy Piper, Jimmy Snuka, and Jimmy Valiant. Once again, Ed Wiskowski, the former Colonel De Beers, has passed away at the age of 80. And taking a look at title changes that took place in Japan, the All Japan World Junior Heavyweight Championship found a new owner yesterday as Musashi beat Naruki Doi in 16 minutes and 27 seconds on Night 3 of All Japan's New Year Wars in Chiba. In the main event, Jun Saito successfully defended the All Japan Triple Crown against Yuma Anzai. Meanwhile, in Tokyo's Korakuen Hall, Yuki Ueno beat Gringo Loco in 15 minutes and 40 seconds to take the DDT Universal Championship at DDT's New Year's New Hero event. In the main event, Chris Brooks retained the KO&D Openweight Championship against Shuji Ishikawa. And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the wrestling news 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The Wrestling News can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News podcast. And remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the Wrestling News across social media. And that's the news for today. If anything happens, we will be here to tell you about it. No clickbait, no paywall, just the Wrestling News. The Wrestling News is a division of Arcadian Vanguard, and the Wrestling Newscast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.